Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Police Accountability Show. Remember, when you watch the Police Accountability Show, you agree to being offended, as well as nothing you see on the Police Accountability Show constitutes legal advice. Please, for legal advice, seek out a lawyer that is local to you. And hi everyone, and welcome to another Police Accountability Show. I'm your host, Chad Christophers. And our topic today, should the police police the police? Should the police investigate themselves? Well, let me ask you a question. If I told you that I thoroughly investigated myself and I found absolutely no wrongdoing, would you believe me? I can barely say it with a straight face, and I think the officers say it here for themselves. And then I said, sure, I'll investigate myself. Well, we believe it. We believe that people can investigate themselves and be thorough, be impartial. Right. That's just so in case of the Sheldon Coopers in the world, that is called sarcasm. Okay? Since it's interesting because if you read the old original Greek model of democracy, because that's where the sort of birthplace of the idea of democracy came from, was the ancient Greeks. Everything was about impartiality. The judges in cases were actually elected from in each case were elected from the general population. That's how random everything is. How impartial everything was back then. And why? Because they wanted to make things as fair as possible for people. So that's something that we shouldn't be allowing the police to do, is to investigate themselves. In fact, by the definition of democracy is to protect the rights of the individual, and having the police investigate themselves does not do that. And why? Because the police can't see their own faults. People are blind, naturally blind to their own mistakes and faults, and I'm no less guilty than anyone else. I make mistakes myself. It is human to err, divine to forgive. But should they really be allowed to evaluate themselves? Why would you say you're bad? Why would you, in fact, even if you say you're bad, in our society, there are definitely cultures where that's very bad, that's a negative completely. It is wrong to say negatives about yourself. So it is even against human interaction, or natural human ability for these officers to go, I did this wrong. They're not going to see fault in what they did. Right? So that's where we need impartiality. Right? We need a independent review by people who care about this topic. And it's up to us as a society to get together, to put the effort in to go and get these guys trained, get an independent review board made for all police everywhere. It should be a given. And why? Because no one is capable of seeing their own faults. No one's going to volunteer getting themselves in trouble. They're just not going to do it. And it's not to say about that these officers are necessarily doing something wrong. They could be making a mistake. And that's the other side of the investigative coin with getting the police to investigate themselves. Is simple. Can they? Can they really see their faults? What about when police officers make mistakes? They're obviously human. They're obviously going to err. They're going to err when they're doing our cases. It's human to error. Right? So having that second set of eyes look over everything to investigate, isn't that better? Isn't that accountability? Isn't that quality control for the police service? Because I tell you, everywhere I've worked, there's a level of quality control. You know, whether I deal with people for a living, and a lot of the time I'm recorded. When I'm on the phone in a workplace and I'm talking to customers, I know chances are my calls are all being recorded for quality assurance purposes. And that's where these officers should be recorded for quality assurance purposes. as well, because they should be assuring the same quality in service that they expect to receive everywhere else, right? And expecting them to do it themselves would be no different than expecting a business to do its own health checks, expecting a business to do its own accountability. It's just not going to happen because people just don't see their own faults. Sometimes you make mistakes and you don't understand how you've done this bad and or wrong. And sometimes it's not about the police being wrong, but the police are not perfect. They're going to make mistakes. And how do we account for that? How do we get the police to not make so many mistakes? Well, that is by having the independent police review, by having other officers check other officers' work, by having more people involved. That's why when you see on TV, they show an entire team of people working on these cases. But in reality, in our reality, in the world, we don't have the budget for a team to work on every single case. We don't have the budget. We can't afford those guys, most of them. You have one guy and they don't have any of those guys training, and they're just trying to do the best job they can. And they're going to make mistakes, and they're going to screw up. And that's where being accountable for their actions isn't just about when they purposely or maliciously do something wrong. What about when they make mistakes? What makes up for their mistakes? And that's where independent review, a clean set of eyes, an impartial view can be helpful. That's what a judge in a case is supposed to be. They're supposed to be the impartial person that you go to sort out our issues. So the question is, when are we going to get the impartial person to evaluate police work, to evaluate complaints with the police? And just telling me the SIU, or the Independent Review Board, and I say SIU because that's what we have here in Toronto, Canada, but they have independent review boards and police boards all over the world. Are they effective? Are they manned by the right people? I think that's questionable. The police have the argument that other people who are not the police don't understand what police are doing and therefore can't give an impartial view. But I do believe that people can be trained to understand, can be educated enough and understand enough to understand what the police do and need to do, and should be able to evaluate quality assurance without being actual ex-police officers or being people who are actually biased towards the police because they used to do the job, or they may be biased for other reasons, or a conflict of interest. So tell me in the comments, what do you think? Do you think they should be able to, because I don't think that should have ever been a thing. I don't think that the police should be able to evaluate themselves. Because why? Because they can't. I don't believe that they're capable of it. I don't believe anyone is fully capable of doing a fully independent review. If you point out to them what they did wrong, maybe it's a mistake. It may not even be malicious. So tell me in the comments, what do you think? Do you think there should be independent police review of everything? Should the police be completely transparent? I believe that we need impartiality and independent review of any police work we want at any time without reason. And why? Because look at the other side of the coin. It's going to save us time and money if there's less mistakes in these cases. There's no reason we can't help out with our own cases. Why not? Anyways, this has been Chad Christophers with Police Accountability. Don't work too hard.